Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. You're about to meet Jeff Conlon, and Jeff is the founder and CEO of Ideas Money Art, IMA, a digital advertising agency based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Jeff and I go way back. When he started IMA 15 years ago, I was hired on as my first job in video production. And Jeff was definitely ahead of his time with digital advertising with video, because he was like, this is going to be the next best thing. And sure enough, it was and is. And IMA is still doing really well. And he considers himself a serial entrepreneur. So I was curious, and I thought you would be curious as well, to learn about like behind the scenes and also like leading up to him starting this company, because turns out he's been starting businesses since a very young age. And I'm always interested in that because from a young age, carving your own fucking path it's just admirable. So I wanted to dive deep into his backstory. And as you will hear, there's been lots of failures, treading waters, and mistakes along the way. What we see on the outside is a lot of the times the success, but we don't really hear and learn about like what was the real story behind the scenes. So Jeff really, breaks it down and is open and vulnerable, and really enjoyed this conversation. So I hope you do as well. Let's meet Jeff. Jeff Conlon, welcome to the show. Welcome to Carve Your Own Fucking Path, because I've known you for a long time and I know that you've been carving your own fucking path, but I want to dive much deeper into your story. And a short intro, and I'll let you intro yourself, but you essentially are a serial entrepreneur in
Yes.
the tech and digital space.
Even back when I was eating cereal entrepreneur at a young age.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, take us back. Let's like dive into your backstory.
Yeah. So it all started, in 1987, and I decided I don't even remember why I wanted to work, but I wanted to make some money. And so I decided to print some flyers up, and, to date myself, this was like on an Apple IIe that my neighbor friend had on a dot matrix printer. And we printed up these flyers and papered the neighborhood, all the cars. And it was KNC car washing, which I had to give him the first letter. His last name was Kirby. So that was the convincing argument to get him to join me, because I didn't want to do it by myself. Yeah. And we had $5 a car, and we would ride our skateboards, and went to Costco and got like a portable vacuum cleaner. And we probably lost, $5, $10, $20 on every car we washed because we weren't charging enough, which has haunted me my entire career.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, for at least a summer. And then I got a real job cleaning rat cages at the Stanford laboratories at Stanford Hospital University.
Wow. So how old were you?
Great.
Were you 13?
I was 12. I was 12 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, it was between 7th and 8th grade, because I remember this vividly. It's just kind of a weird memory, but we got our own. So my brother and I got our own phone lines as a Christmas present, right? It was junior high, and he was in high school at that point. So my mom got us business cards as like our present. So here's the business card with our phone number on it, right? And then,
so cool.
and then she's like, "And surprise, you have your own phone lines." So I had written on the back of all these business cards, KNC Car Washing Company, right? Because I had a business card.
Yeah.
And I remember like showing it off. And this is funny, actually. So I was showing it off going into like the summer going to 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of embarrassed. Like, you know, I kind of filtered through them because I was kind of embarrassed that I had this business. I don't know. It was kind of a funny thing. Like the card was really cool, right? Like I have my own number, like ladies, like here's my number if you want to call my private line. But for whatever reason, I had like this embarrassment that I had been washing cars all summer or something, as if I should have just been independently wealthy. Yeah, it was funny. But that was one of the cards I gave to Claire, my current wife, because we were boyfriend and girlfriend all through 8th grade.
This is quite a love story. We'll dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah, that's not what this podcast is about, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, it
is. I mean, the podcast, it's about unconventional entrepreneurs.
Yes.
As in maybe most entrepreneurs are, but you especially, because you, from such a young age, you've been putting yourself out there in a way of like, I'm going to earn money on my own, create something of value and earn money. So what about your parents? Are either of them entrepreneurs?
Zero. My dad, 37 years as a PE teacher in middle school, which I went to that middle school, which was tough. I used to get dragged into his office, you know, feel like I got caught making out, you know, they dragged me in there. And, it was not good. And then my mom worked for my uncle, who was a dentist when I was growing up. And then this is an interesting story, so I'll tell it really quickly because a lot of people don't know this. So when I was 14, she went back to work for United Airlines. Mm-hmm. And so it's changed our lives, and 1,000% changed mine, because this is long before 9/11. And we used to just get these stacks of tickets, blank tickets. So as soon as I was to fly. So as soon as I was 18, I would literally roll up to SFO, or when I was going to school in San Diego, to San Diego Airport, and just write in whatever I want. So I used to go to Hawaii for the day.
Oh my God. Who goes to Hawaii for the day?
I did it all the time. So it was when I was in San Diego. So I'd go to the airport in the morning, like a 7 a.m. flight, right in Honolulu. I'd fly over, you know, first class almost all the time, because it was kind of pre-points and upgrades and all that. So that's where the open seats were. Wow. So yeah, fly like a 747 first class to Honolulu, walk out like I was going and, you know, grab a shuttle bus to like whatever hotel and just pretend I was staying at the hotel for the free ride. And then I'd rent a board and I'd surf all day. And then I'd take the red eye home. It was crazy.
This is an insane story.
That was like a regular, I probably did that, I don't know, 5 or 6 times in the 2-3 years I was in San Diego. It was just like, I'm in Hawaii. Wow. Or I go to New York. I went to New York. Same kind of thing, just for the weekend. No money. Yeah. So anyhow.
That's nuts. But I mean, again,
the story about United. Yeah. So the story about United, though, my mom is, like I said, she was just working like the reception desk in my uncle's dentistry office. And then she got this job back at United because when she was in 65, she married my dad, and she was fired because she was married, because you had to be single.
No way.
I just didn't. Yeah. So they not only have like weekly weight check-ins, like stand on the scale in front of your boss, and certain types like Pan Am was like more kind of European, and United was like girl next door. I mean, it's insane how sexist gross like the airlines were. And then if you were married, you had to quit. So there was this huge lawsuit. I think it was called like the McDonald lawsuit in the 80s. And she got her job back. They gave her like this chunk of change, which I don't know what it was. It was like 20 grand or something like that, and offered her a job. So she went back to work like at 45. Yeah, it was wild.
And she worked there until she retired.
She worked there till 9/11, and then she's like, and I'm good. Yeah, that she was supposed to fly that morning, just not, you know, anywhere near New York. But obviously everything was canceled, and she's like, I've got like 2 years of sick days, because she never would call in sick. And that was the end. Yeah. So my parents were not entrepreneurial at all. Okay. Now that with being like business or music or film or sports or whatever, they are fully supportive, and they've never really gotten in my way about all the crazy ideas I've had over the years. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So they were really instrumental in that way.
Yeah. So always supportive.
Always supportive.
Even if they couldn't relate necessarily.
Yeah. Which is like, as a gift from a parent, you couldn't ask for anything more.
No, that's everything.
Yeah. It was
for sure.
Huge. And I'm incredible, and they're both still alive and healthy. And I've just been incredibly lucky on that front. And I don't take that for granted.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And did you feel like you were different though? I hear this a lot from people like that in your, they just felt like, I'm not going to take the straight and narrow path.
That's the best way to say it. So I was definitely, my ego is very healthy from a young age. Mm-hmm. So different, back then I might've said better.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work over the years. So yeah, I thought I was destined to be on the cover of Time magazine, quite honestly. And I wasn't shy about thinking that. Not that I would walk around telling people that, but that was kind of a goal.
Was it? What were you on Time magazine for?
Well, it was always because I was very young doing this kind of, wonderkin kind of thing. So that was always a core element because I just kind of wanted to prove myself at a young age.
Okay.
And then, but interestingly enough, which we can dive into more deeply, the fact it was like business entrepreneurial related.
Okay.
Because in my teen years, I worked at this hotel in Palo Alto, well, technically Menlo Park, right on the border. And it went through this phase where I was coming up with what I thought were good ideas for inventions. So I thought I was going to be an inventor for years. I was just coming up with all this stuff, and I didn't invent it, but I came up with this idea for this swizzle stick that had which probably don't even exist anymore, but it had cream and sugar in it. That was my big breakthrough idea, which I almost got patented, which was pretty funny. There was this guy in Larkspur actually who was a patent guy, and I went up and had meetings with him, but I couldn't afford it. So so that was the thing. I thought I would invent something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Silicon Valley, which at the time wasn't necessarily on the map for that. So how did that play into how did that influence you?
Well, it was interesting. So we had, like I mentioned, so 12 years old, printing up the flyers on an Apple II, right? So we had family friends who worked at Apple. And again, this is early Apple, right? Just making computers. So there was tech around. We had another neighbor who worked at a smart, what's it called? Word processor company. Obviously was destroyed, but so there was kind of that in the air a little bit, but Redwood City was still far north of Silicon Valley at that point. Mm-hmm. But I've always been really into technology as well. So, I was a kid when the VCR came out of the box on Christmas morning, and my dad opened the manual. I had it set up 2 seconds later. That was, I just always solving those kind of problems. Mm-hmm. So we got a video camera when I was really young, and 14, I think. And so it was a junior of high school, me and a buddy, similar patterns. You can see, we're going to see that. I talked someone else into joining this business idea with me. So this is number 2. And we carried our video cameras all year, junior year of high school. And we made a video yearbook. And these things were kind of bubbling up at the time. Mm-hmm. But we made a video yearbook, edited the whole thing deck to deck on 2 VHS players.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super old school. Yeah.
Yep.
And then we had this huge showing at the end of the year at this big pizza place, and we sold $3,000 worth of videos.
So cool. And you taught yourself editing.
I mean, there wasn't much to learn. It was pause and record, pause and record.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, this is pre-Premiere and long before Final Cut. So yeah. So that was my second business, was that entire school year of basically filming. And it was essentially just a video of my friends. We told so this is where I started to learn marketing. So at the end of that school year, when the grand premiere party was coming up, we told anyone that pre-bought the movie, right, the yearbook, that they'd they guaranteed me in it. So if they paid us, we would just walk around that day and film it. Like get like 5 seconds of footage. And we're like, all right, we did it. We're next. So there was guaranteed inclusion if you bought the thing, which is pretty ridiculous. But yeah, that's kind of where all that began.
Yeah. And then what did you envision for your future? So let's say you're junior high, you've got the yearbook, that's going well. You're thinking of yourself on the cover of Time. What did you think was going to be next for you?
That's where things kind of fall apart because I didn't have any vision at that point. Like as to what I didn't want to be, like a kid grew up. I always want to be a lawyer, or like I have a good friend, and she knew from like the time she was 5, she was going to be a veterinarian, and now she's a veterinarian. So that's what I mean. There was a lot of ego in it. Like, I'm going to be on the Time magazine. Why? What are you good at? I don't know, kind of thing. Right. But in hindsight, it was just kind of building up to what's kind of transpired in my life. And what happened in my 20s is I went to school. So I went to San Diego State. It's the only school I applied to. And I only applied there because a buddy of mine I was working with got in. So I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go to San Diego State. But I had really no interest in college. But that wasn't really a thing back in the 90s, right? Right. So, so I went and did 2 years, like got kicked out, right? So like 1.8 grade point average, like was just surfing and drinking beer. That's all I was doing. But I took a drama class where instead of taking the final, you could write a play. Okay. And so that was a really pivotal moment because I wrote the play. It was a 1 act. It was super cheesy, but I got an A, and I directed it too. So I wrote the play and I directed all these people in it. There's like 6 people in the play, and it was super well received, and I got an A. And the TA in that class told me, like, what do you want to do? Like, are you interested in doing this? Because I just took the drama class totally randomly. And I told him, like, I think I want to write. Like, it just kind of, having made doing the video stuff and kind of telling stories a little bit and having that experience. And I was starting to read a lot, right? So it's kind of reading the Steinbecks and the Hemingways and the Mailer, like kind of going through that young man phase of like reading all those authors. And she's like, well, there's a real, like, what was her quote? It was like, there's something very noble in chasing your dreams or something like that. And that's pretty much all I needed. So I dropped out of school and I moved back home, or I moved to San Francisco, started taking film classes at City College. And that kind of like set the next 10 years.
So interesting, because it sounds like an organic flow, but the storytelling was what was drawing you in. So you had like the digital experience and then the writing, working with actors. So then when you went to film, you went to City College. And then started studying. You were early 20s at this point?
Yeah, it was 94. So I was 22, 23. Yeah.
Okay.
Or no, 21. I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you have an idea for like, I want to have my own business? Was that still on your mind, or?
So that's when like my 20s started and I fully shifted to like art. So that was an interesting time for me, and I was traveling a ton as well. Like I still had those passes from my mom. Yeah. Cool. So I was, I think it was in those between 22 and 24, I went to like 35 countries and 6 continents and just was like on a plane all the time. Just like I would work all summer and then get on a plane or, jump on the plane to go visit friends in Kentucky or, fly to New Orleans for no reason and just having a lot of fun. And so I also I went to Europe for 2 months and brought like this huge video camera again back, before things were on your phone. And I just loved it. Like I just lugged around like a 15-pound video camera in Europe for a couple of months and filmed everything, and then came home and edited the whole thing together into like a 45-minute movie. And, so that was I was just enjoying that creativity of it. Yeah. And I was playing music at the same time, teaching myself how to play guitar, and I'd been playing drums for a long time, grew up playing saxophone and stuff. So I when I left San Francisco, I reconnected. So I didn't graduate from City College either. So I haven't graduated anywhere. For you. Yeah. And left the city, moved onto my dad's boat, in Redwood City at the time. His boat was in Redwood City, and was living on my dad's boat, and reconnected with an old friend that we went to high school with, or that I went to high school with. And he was deep into music. And so we started playing music and started recording music and kind of putting a band together, which pretty quickly imploded. But that was like, he was to this day, he is just an artist at heart, like deeply just an artist at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting during that time is like with that, with his influence and what we were doing, I really took that identity on, which has actually been a hindrance later in life, which we can definitely get into. But yeah, I just fully embraced like, fuck the world and fuck everybody. And yeah, okay. We'll show you kind of thing.
Okay. So I love that you brought up identity, because it drives us and it shifts as well, so. Absolutely. Your identity at that time was like rebellious. Like, I'm an artist. Did you consider yourself a filmmaker?
Yeah. Musician, filmmaker. I was trying to write a play. We moved to New York for a period. So, living that broke, lifestyle and.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So that was the identity for sure.
Okay. And did you still have visions of this? I mean, did that ever change? Did your Time magazine cover ever change?
The Time magazine changed to like the cover of Spin magazine. Okay. That was the big change. Yeah. Big goals. And we also, and again, we never played a show. I played shows in other incarnations, but the one main band that we had, we never played a show. We built a studio, a soundproof studio in the garage of our rental in Davis, of all places, which is a totally long story. So that took 3 months to build the studio. We practiced 4 songs for 3 months, and then we broke up because my buddy and the singer had a falling out. But our egos, like in our thing was like, if we're not signed after 5 shows, that'll be impossible. Like, we are so good that if we're not signed to a major label after 5 shows, like something's wrong with the world. Mm-hmm. So it had shifted. Time magazine had shifted to like, Spin magazine, and it was still full of hubris. Yeah.
Okay. Where do you think this like incredible self-esteem came from? So I'm going to call it self-esteem, not ego.
I'll go with that. It's been a driving force and a hindrance, right? So it's like strengths and weaknesses 100%. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, quite honestly, I will say that like going back to the touch point of my parents saying I could do whatever I wanted and not saying, no, that's stupid, or like the only time, and I still remember this and it still kind of like gets me, is so a couple years later, 2 years later after the band thing, I made a feature film. I wrote and directed and produced a movie. And the only time the only memory, and I still have it, so it obviously hit, is my mom kind of said one day, well, it's not really going to happen. Like, and we were like a month away from shooting. Like, I had done so much work at this point. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of an offhand. I think she was just trying to say, like, because I was at the end, I was still pulling together like a cinematographer and a location and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, that's like the first time I ever remember her saying, like, I don't think this is going to work. Right. And it was incredibly ambitious with no experience at 27 to make a feature film and like to hire people from LA to come up and, shoot the thing and the whole thing. Right. But so besides that point, there was no other point where she said, you can't do that. Or my dad said, what the hell are you thinking? Like, just get a job. Like, there was none of that. Like, get a job with Benny's kind of, I never heard a word, nothing.
Wow.
So I think as a kid, when you grow up with that, right? You just, you have a good idea, or what you think is a good idea, and your most important people say, sure. And it just allows you to think bigger and think like, okay, I can do this. So to get a little woo-woo for a second. So I'm also an Aquarian, right? Yeah. So I'm Aquarius. And I think there's just a natural like affinity for ideas, if you will. Right. But what's really fascinating now is my son is born, my younger son, Finn, is 4 days younger, or his birthday is 4 days before mine. So January 27th. And what I'm witnessing already, so he just turned 7, is I'm like, oh, I got to stay ahead. Like, not necessarily stay ahead of this kid, but if I'm not ahead, I need to acknowledge that and not fake it, because he will like call me on it. Like I'll lose respect, right? Yeah. So I can see that manifestation in him of what I was like, right? Wow. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I have a better idea than you do, and and everything kind of comes easy for him, which is I wasn't the greatest at anything, but everything came easy. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely a real learning experience now, raising kind of, and he's his own person, obviously, and but there's a real like, oh, okay, now some lessons are on the way.
Yes. Role reversal.
Completely.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's a question I don't know if any of us can answer, but it's like the nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. Clearly he has your DNA.
Yeah.
But in your case, you had that ambition is inside of you.
Yeah.
Either like, I believe you have it or you don't.
Yeah. And it still exists. Like I haven't lost it. So, we were talking before, like I'm 48, but I still feel the same, like, oh, the best is yet to come. Like, like wait till you see what I do next kind of attitude. And that's amazing. I don't know if that'll ever go away. Like it just seems like it shouldn't.
No, definitely not. And that's cultural, I think, by certain, like you said, you're close to 50. And what does that even mean? What does 50 mean?
Well, Gary Vee says it means nothing, and I'm just getting started, so I believe him.
Oh, did he say that?
That's one of his main things. I mean, he's very repetitive with his content, but he's just like, if you're 63, you're just getting started, and like, the race is not over, and all this stuff. So
and I love that.
Yeah, why not?
God, it's
I don't even like I've had my business for 15 years, and I'm like, this is just like the warm up, right? Like, the next thing is going to be even better, but I don't know what that is. Yeah,
retirement.
Yeah, I bet. What does that even mean? Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, like financial security I'll take, right? Like, and then I get to play with whatever I want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be nice.
The next iteration. Wow. Yeah. I can identify with that too, I think. And that's, it's a wonderful thing, because it is this, like, that means growth. Right. Imagine if you felt like the best hasn't or had already come.
Right. Or like, like the cliche of high school being like your glory or something. Like, what the hell is that? Like, if you thought that, like, exactly. Yeah, like, no thanks.
Not a good look.
No, not a good look.
Yeah. Well, I will slip in this fun fact that you and I met. I mean, it was probably 2005.
Right around then.
I was just getting into production. I knew absolutely nothing. And you took a chance on me and hired me as the craft services person.
Was that the first thing you did?
Yes. Yeah. Craft services. I think a bit of the clapper,
Yeah.
All the
Do you remember what shoot it was? Was it that Target thing that we did?
It was something else.
Okay.
Remember the call time. Now, the call time means you arrive there at this time. And I remember it was like it was at least, it was 5 a.m.
Yeah. It was dark.
In the South Bay.
Yeah.
I just thought, these guys are like nuts, what is this? And I had to go shopping for food before.
Yeah, I'm sure we dumped all of the responsibility on you. We were like, something with food, go.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
So you really were the first company that I worked with in production.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that was the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, and that came out of like 2005. So I basically at that point had given up. The timeline is I gave up on the movie at that point because I tried to fix my movie for years. Like I had. Do you remember that where our original office was in Mill Valley? Yep. Underneath the house? So I had the editing set up, with the old like G4 Mac and the 2 like screens and all the old school stuff. Yep. And that was, I spent, I don't even know, thousands of hours down there trying to fix my terrible movie, and it just never happens. But we had the editing equipment, and there's a lot of crazy stories on how we also started hustling other stuff. Like we didn't have a camera, right? So we had editing equipment, which was really state of the art at the time. Like we spent like $10K on that editing suite, right? Which now this is just hilarious because I could do better on my iPhone app on my phone,
right?
Or iMovie app. But we didn't have a camera, so I had Oh God, this is a whole other podcast. But I'd gone to work for this guy who was raising money from like wealthy Marin dentists and doctors and stuff to make a movie. And he was a complete scam artist. So he raised over like $2 or $3 million.
Oh my God.
Completely scammed it all. And I got hired by him, although I never got paid. I think I got paid once, like because he was a scam artist. Yeah. My job was to go like find more suckers, right? But about a month in, he split. And so he took off back to London where he was from. There was actually an article in Vanity Fair just recently about how like the head of Disney had to resign because of the same guy and his girlfriend. Like he is still out there.
Wow.
Doing this. Yeah. I won't name any names, but he's actually changed his name. If that tells you anything.
That is nuts.
It was nuts. So my brilliant idea, because I knew like the core people that were involved with him. So I pitched them on, well, hey, you guys are out a couple million. I'm sorry about that. You've known me for like 30 days. Yeah. And what we should do is go back to everybody who lost money, raise more money. I'll write a script about what just happened to you called Half of Nothing. And then we can make that movie. And they kind of bought in on this, which was hilarious. So I wrote the script, but I needed money to write the script, right? So they put me together with this guy who was the son of Fair Isaac, which invented FICO credit score, basically, right? So he's basically like one of the family members of this like $1 billion family. But he wasn't doing so well in his life. He had made some less than great choices. But he was kind of a hoarder. So they sent me to his house and they're like, whatever you can sell, you can keep.
Oh my God.
And he had this yard like by Denny's where Denny's used to be in Corte Madera, like this big. So I went down there and I was selling jet skis and golf clubs and all this stuff. And that's how I lived. And wrote the screenplay. Of course, no one was like actually going to give any money to like make this happen. So that completely fizzled out. But while I was on this guy's like vacant lot, like selling stuff, there was this guy that lived on his lot in a trailer. And this is Burning Man was happening. So he had like these trailers or container things, right? And he had them built out for like raves. So there's like a gym and like all these creepy it was just like creepy, weird dude.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But he had a camera. And so I would borrow the camera from him. And that's how IMA's first videos got made. By like this borrowed camera from this wackadoodle living in a container in a dirt parking lot. And then our edit suite. So yeah, it was strange early days.
A story. And this is why I love these, these deep dives, like because below the surface, there's always, of course, so much going on, but on the outside, you guys, you and your best friend, there was three of you, three best friends, start this company, Ideas, Money, Art, IMA,
which that's actually I'm glad you brought the name up because the original name of the company was IMA Interactive, but it always meant Ideas, Money, Art, but we were ashamed to like call it Ideas, Money, Art. It just sounded pretentious and like didn't sound digitally enough right back then. Yeah. And so we added the interactive. And that's, so only recently we actually switched the name like in 2016 to what it actually should have been in the first place. So so we started Ideas, Money, Art. Yep.
And then you started pitching yourselves around as like, you were making a lot of commercials. So yeah.
Originally it was online video. That was the original concept. Was Rob, came and said, hey, we should make commercials. I'm like, no, I don't want to I don't want to sell out and make commercials. Yeah. He's like, yeah, but we got the stuff. We can do it. I'm like, online video. It's going to be all about online video. So let's do that. And YouTube hadn't even launched. No. YouTube was like 6 months away from actually even going live. So we were pitching people like for $1,000, like interior designers, right? Like $1,000, you can get a video on your website that tells your whole story and the whole thing. And like for my own like artistic ego at that point, like that was okay. Like an online video was different than a commercial. But then quickly we switched and started making everything. Yeah.
You guys were definitely ahead of the curve.
Yeah, we should have started YouTube. That's what we should have done.
God damn it. So that, yeah.
Yeah.
Close.
It was close.
And clearly, I mean, to skip way ahead to current, I mean, you have this business.
Yeah.
IMA is still going. It's had, well, bring us through that story. And also, again, like being an artist and then doing this digital, commercial kind of thing.
So, I mean, going to the being seen part, right? Mm-hmm. Like that through this entire 15, 16 year journey now, like being seen for like owning a bit. And it's not like a digital marketing agency is like something super lame, right? It's not. No, I mean, it's okay. It's nothing fancy, but it's not awful. But to be seen as that, like to have that as my bio, and again, to whom? No one cares. Like no one gives a damn. But like it was still like kind of, I don't want to be known as that, right? I would rather be known as something else, and there isn't even another answer to that. So that's been an issue, like really putting myself out there. And with IMA, there's this idea of hunters and farmers, if you're familiar with that. Mm-mm. So typically like people who start businesses are hunters or farmers, and hunters are kind of pretty typically like salespeople, right? They're going to go out, they're going to hustle, they're going to like, buy from me. And I have that, I can do that. But I do it to then just get the wheels rolling. And then I kind of quickly shift into farmer mode. And farmer is like processes, right? Culture, like bringing on employees, nurturing the company. And so I would just kind of like hide in farmer mode and work on the agency. And that's still like to this day is something that I'm very cognizant of and still, technically battling it, right? Like it's not battling like I don't understand my foe, right? It's not a mysterious force, but it's something my ego's still dealing with, right? Which is bananas. Cause like I said earlier, no one gives a fuck. Like no one cares.
Yeah.
At all. Right. It's my own story. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I appreciate you being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And talking about this because, again, this is all new information too.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, interesting.
Dig in.
Yeah, and so the being seen is like, it sounds like as going way back again, being seen was important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, right? Magazine cover. Yeah. Yeah,
and being seen as a certain person, and so that hasn't been fulfilled. That version of you has not been seen.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. I think I guess the way to think about it is like on my terms, which also doesn't make a lot of sense because it's not like I don't own this business. Like I didn't start the business, right? I inherited from my dad or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it still feels like a little bit of a plan. I mean, plan B isn't really fair, but it's still like a little bit of that, right? Like, I guess the better way to think of it is like on my, my tombstone, do I want it to say digital marketer? And no, I could give a fuck with that. Right. So I think that's really what it is, like fulfilling my destiny, if you will. Right. And then being seen for that.
Right.
But I think that's also changed a lot as you get older and you have a family, and other things become much more important than what you did.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say in the career part, what would you want it to say? What would you want to be seen for?
So the original vision and the dream with IMA, even like, and it was pretty detailed. Like the goal was to get a pier, one of the piers on San Francisco, on Embarcadero.
Oh, a pier.
Like have the whole pier.
Water. Okay. Yep.
And this is when I was living in Marin. So, have a boat that you like a boat that you would like, like a speedboat that you would drive to the pier.
Yeah. Going to work.
And then and then within the pier would be a marketing arm. Right. Because the other kind of, and it was more of a rationalization, but it is very logical. It's like, if you're going to do other things, you need to learn how to market. Like that was also the thing, like with my movie, I had no idea how to tell people about this movie. Right. And it used to frustrate me because people who are really good in like, at marketing themselves especially back in the 90s indie scene, right? There was a lot of people that were good at that, even if their movies were terrible. Like, Kevin Clark or whatever that guy's name was. Kevin Smith.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
So I like, that makes sense. You need that, but then it needs to grow into other things like a record label, and it needs to grow into like a movie studio. And, so the Pier would have like a recording studio and a record, and a theater and editing bays and a really just a creative hive. So even still, that would be a great way to go. And I do there's one, like, it's technically a regret, although I wouldn't change anything about my life, but to the point about YouTube, right? So I wasn't wrong about online video being the next thing. Then I started like the most like, like labor intensive, like part of the industry. Like, I'm going to make videos for small businesses, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
And me and a friend were talking probably 7 or 8 years ago about starting a record label that was focused on social media and all, right? And so like, I've had these ideas, but when you're, running a business, those ideas are really difficult to put in because you're always kind of optimizing and running and making the business better. So that's kind of, we were talking about like next 3 to 5 years and like possibly selling IMA or just popping up top of it. That would probably be the direction I'd want to go. And also to help people do what they want to do, right? Whether that be on the creative side or, now as a creator online or whatever, and kind of mentor, kind of produce, right? Less being the director writer nowadays and kind of acting more as a kind of mentor producer with the experience and, the funds. And so if that were on my tombstone, right? Like, created this amazing environment, whatever that looked like, helped all these people kind of like fulfill those dreams. That would really be like, that resonates.
Okay.
Yeah, way more than digital marketer.
Yeah.
Even though that's what I've become an expert at. And I always tell people, especially like people starting out, I'm like, be careful what you get good at, because that, right? Like, you get good at something and you're 30 and you make money. That's how you make your money. And so it's not a bad thing. Like, having a marketable skill is really important, but just make sure you don't hate it.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel, because that is a bit of a fallback in a way, that it's become comfortable as you started to generate money, the business is going good, then it just felt like, oof, be comfortable.
Like I was stuck in IMA kind of thing?
Or curious what you mean by that. Like, I mean, I'm getting comfortable.
Oh, getting, like, being good at, like, getting,
careful what you get good at, because then it might become too safe.
Yeah. Or that's, as as we get older, there's, certain choices you make in your life where now you have responsibilities. I mean, I used to be I could live on $3,000 a month. Like, that was like, and eat out all the time and like go to bars, travel. Yeah. Like, I didn't have health insurance or car insurance, but who needs that?
So now you have responsibilities, family.
And even if it's just a higher rent, right? Instantly things get, complicated. So if you start adding those things into your life, those complexities, and the way you make your money is this thing that you got good at, you see that you see that all the time. And like all the self-help stuff, like, you're stuck, you hate your job, your midlife crisis, right? All that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And in your case, having a business. Okay. First of all, have you ever had a job? So what's interesting is from 12 to 35, I had about 50 jobs. Oh. Which I have on a list. Okay. I actually wrote them down because I'm like, I'm going to start, like, my memory is going to start failing and I'll start forgetting. Totally.
So I did everything from selling meat out of the back of a truck door to door to call centers, all the worst jobs you can think of.
Got it. Ditto. Yeah.
But I've never had a job. No, I've never, as an adult, like a real job. Not a single day. Wow. Which is amazing. It's
amazing. It's so rare, truly. And that's pretty admirable. And I'm sure looking at other people, again, I call it the prescribed path. You just follow along and and do all the things. Nothing against it at all. Sometimes I envy that. I'm like, God, I could just do what everyone else does. Yeah. But, that must be even crazier for you, like to look the other side.
Well, and going back to the Silicon Valley connection, right? So I had ample opportunities because I was temping in these jobs, like getting these shitty temp jobs, working the desk at Broadcom or, all these companies that were building basically the internet. And it was like just looking down my nose at all these people, just like, oh my God, you guys are just suckers. And I have 3 family members who've made millions and millions of dollars from tech stock IPOs, right? And their lives are forever changed, and they retired super young, one of them is still going, but he's just accumulating more. So, and it's on his terms, so go for it. So like I had, again, like being in the right place at the right time, but not necessarily making like the prescribed choice. Yeah. And that was also like, to wrap the parent thing back in, like my parents didn't know what was happening. They had no vision into like what an IPO was. I mean, not that they don't know what an IPO was, but like, oh, you should just go get a job at Yahoo, right? Like you could be employee 50 at Google, like just go get any job there. And there was never a word. It's like, no, I'm going to go drive around in a van and play music like that. That sounds like a better idea. So yeah, I mean, things could have been way differently, way different.
And that's the thing with our choices, right?
Yeah. And I have zero regrets because I would have gotten fired. They would have fired me. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
Like week 3 at Yahoo, they would have been like, no, fuck you. Get out of here. Like, no, you're fired.
Yeah. And even I feel like these things too, about being the first one at these companies. I don't think people joining them had any idea I'm going to be the 15th employee at this company. Yeah. And that's where, if any of us knew this stuff, come on, we wouldn't,
we'd all have $40 million. Yeah,
exactly.
And I should say, to balance that out, I know a lot of people who've chased IPOs and have gone from one crap startup to another and are in their 40s and they're like, I'm just waiting, just trying to hit a home run. So it's weird that I have 3 family members, right, that have had that experience, but I don't think that's the norm. It's extremely rare. And the flip side is not a lot of fun.
No.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I got fired as a temp, so I mean, in one of these companies.
Didn't even handle you for a temp job.
It was 3 days in the mailroom and they fired me and my buddy. Yeah.
So I really never knew how rebellious you were. I love it.
It's a double-edged sword.
Well, yes, but also back to the identity thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, now you're a father of 2 and a husband, business owner. What is your identity? Like, what are you feeling now that you resonate with?
I mean, the family stuff comes first, and it's a total cliche, and it should be a cliche, right? Like, if it's not, then you should probably like check the mirror. So I just love that. I just love being a dad. And, when things like I mentioned with my youngest son, I'm like, oh shit, like he's going to be a challenge. Like this is going to be fun, right? Because I always see it as like, just imagine what he can do, right? Without putting, clamps on him or telling him this is not possible, or it's just so much fun to think about. Like you got it all ahead of you, and then let's craft, your path
right
as best we can, so you have every advantage.
And how? Yeah. I was going to ask if what was him seeing you? Of course, he knows dad is like got his own thing.
Dad's in the room next to ours.
Yeah. He locks the door too.
Yeah, and he locks the door.
And so I'm just curious if you would encourage him also with having his own business and all of that. I mean, are you kind of a bit of like your parents you can do whatever you want, or would you steer him sort of away from certain things?
I would steer him away from a prescribed path is what I would steer him away from. Yeah, 100%. Especially now. I mean,
yeah.
So I've been on Twitter super heavy since COVID started, right? Because I wanted like direct tweets from doctors instead of like filtering it through the news. And I also got into this whole kind of creator economy pool of people on Twitter. And, there's this guy in Austin named Nat Eliason, and I think he's 27. And there was this new kind of hot note-taking app. I mean, just like really like banal stuff, right? Like super niche corners of the internet. Yeah. So this note-taking app, Roam, kind of started taking off. He built a course on how to use Roam effectively, and he made $500,000 in 6 months.
Oh my God.
And it took him, I don't know, 2 weeks to make, maybe 3 weeks. So when you see that type of ability to earn on your own terms and do it in a really I mean, he only gave value back to people with that course, right? It was reasonably priced and it totally helped people. Mm-hmm. So there's no way I could see that and be like, kids, 10 years of law school or 10 years of school, be a lawyer with $1 million in debt. And
exactly.
No, I mean, unless they wanted to be a lawyer, then great. I'll never, my kids are like, I want to be a lawyer. I'll be like, okay.
You're paying for law school.
Oh yeah, you're paying for it all. You're working.
Yeah.
I've been working since I was 13. You are working.
Yes. I'll print the flyers for you.
I will print those flyers
but you're
on the laser printer. Yeah. But no, it's 100%. Like let them go out and fail and figure it out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then for work, like the way I see myself now is I just read this amazing quote. So Steve Martin, in his book, I think it's called something Standing Up. It's a great book. But I had forgotten about this quote that somebody just referenced the other day that I saw online. It was like, he spent 10 years learning how to be a stand-up, right? He spent 4 years after that refining what he learned to be good. And then he had 4 years of wild success and then he quit. And so that's, and I really resonate with that because I'm not at 18 years yet. Well, hopefully, that the success is like the wild success is coming, but it takes forever. It takes so long. And now the way I run the business and the way that we help other businesses with what we do, it really works. Like there's no like, does this work or not? I don't know. You should pay us. So that's gone. Like it really works. We have a really tested and proven system, and all of our systems internally are locked down and scalable. It takes forever, right? To build and figure out what this and that. And like, we haven't made a TV commercial in 12 years. You know what I mean? Like we got away from that and into the digital stuff completely. And it takes forever. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, now I can see like the flywheel concept and, and not everything we do is custom and we're like back to the drawing board. Mm-hmm. So that's fascinating. It has been fascinating for me, but I'm just now feeling like 15, 16 years in that, okay, now I can figure this out. And some people do it in like a year or 2 or 4. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. But
do they?
Or you catch a wave that you just happen to be right place, right time, right?
True.
Yeah. So there's that.
Overnight success is bullshit.
It's total bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't show, unless you're like a meme, like, like people are making fun of you overnight success, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, there's no, what you're doing and overnight, like, or even in a year, right? It's just not a thing.
And what about the like failures, let's say, or what is your experience with failure? Sorry, not experience, but perspective. Do you look at it as failure or do you look at it as like, this is just feedback and did I keep trudging through?
I mean, I've failed at way more things than I've succeeded at, right? Which I don't think is too abnormal. And the way I look at it now, after, listening to tons of podcasts with people like on Ferris's podcast and stuff, and they talk about this, is I think you have to look at everything as a process. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you come out of that, so let's say you do a year-long project and it fails, right? Well, as long as at the end of that year, you've treated it as a learning process and you come out of that with a new skill, then it's not a failure at all, right?
Yeah.
So I think like with my movie, that was like the biggest failure. I had this little trifecta, which is still like pretty raw, which is crazy because it was like almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But my movie like did not work. I tried to fix it for years, but I knew like it was not, like I fucked up and made a bad movie. And so I was getting rejection letters from like every festival that I could afford to send to, because I couldn't even afford to send it like as many as I wanted. So that was just constant rejection. Mm. And then I don't know if you remember, but I had a rescue pit bull. Mm. You remember? Yeah. So I don't know if she was still around. So, and she had behavioral issues, ended up biting somebody, and I was working with her as best I could back then.
Yeah.
To kind of fix that. She bit somebody, I got sued. Like I had to put her down. Right. Okay. And then I had a 6-year relationship end right at all the same time. And I blew my knee out playing pickup basketball. So this is like,
damn,
all that came to a head. I mean, literally like after my surgery, like the lawyer or the person like served me my legal papers. It was crazy. It was just like, it was a really hard kind of triumvirate of rejection and failure. Like you failed this dog and you had to kill it basically. Right. Which is crazy. Went to the deuce that night, got super drunk. The relationship ended, and, this dream of yours you've been working on for years, like it's not going to happen. And then the lawsuit was a cherry on top. So what I came out of that, because I didn't really come out of much with that. I mean, I would say for years, like I think I just kind of like carried the wound for a long time. And then obviously it birthed the business. So there was like a, not planned, but kind of, it wasn't like I was like, well, this is my process and I've learned to, no, I was just like, I just honestly, we started the business because my unemployment ran out. That's the only reason we started IMA, because like this is your last check. I'm like, gotta pay rent next month. Let's make some videos. So that was more just like carrying that. And then with maturity and learning from, other mistakes, that, okay, now I just have more perspective. Like I still get super stressed out at times. Yeah. Stressful thing running a business, having a family, balancing it all, coronavirus, right? All this, right? Yeah. But I definitely kind of have a different lens at this point in my life. So even if things like last year, when COVID started, I'm like, we're just going to hold on to the house. If everything else falls apart, we're just going to make sure we do whatever we can to keep the house and go from there. And that was like kind of my like looking into the abyss approach. Like this could be really awful, right? Things could go super south. I had no idea if the business was going to even survive. And so it's like, okay, well, what can we do? Let's just focus on one main thing and go from there. And I think that's kind of the way I handle things now. Like, yeah.
Well, resilience.
Yeah.
If you have been through all of that, again, happening at once, it's like, it's almost, you're like, bring it on.
Yeah.
A little bit. I'm sure not the time. You're like,
yeah, no, I'm like, I got nothing else. Like, I got nothing. Like, please don't bring it on anymore. But yeah, it was a lot.
They say that the universe like gives you what you can handle. Right?
And that really birthed me into adulthood. That's really what happened.
Yeah.
It was like, because I was 33 or whatever, what was I? Yeah, in that range. And it was just kind of, and I had not been an adult, right? I had not had a real job. And it was just kind of like, nope, there you go. Like, yeah, you're going to deal with all this. And then, so during the last year, while we were, at home, we have a golden retriever that we adopted a few years ago. And then we adopted this little pit mix rescue. Oh. So there's definitely a little, like, I'm trying to like a little karmic retribution, and she's a sweetheart. So I'm not worried about her biting anybody. But we've done a ton of training. Like I train the hell out of my dogs now.
I bet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Talking about full circle.
Yes.
You have to share your love story, which is
it's bananas. It's totally bananas. So Claire's my wife, and we both grew up in Redwood City, and we both went to McKinley junior high school. So, and that's where my dad taught. So in 7th grade, we were friends, but just friends. And then in 8th grade, I don't exactly remember exactly when, because it was a long long ass time ago, but we basically started dating right at the beginning of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we dated the entire year.
Of eighth grade.
Eighth grade. So the whole year.
What does that entail exactly in eighth grade?
Well, I was going to get to that. So it entails like incredibly like raging hormones, right? A lot of sweaty palms.
Totally.
And very little communication. Like we always joke about it now. Like we were so like we joked that the connection was there, but it was so intense that we literally couldn't talk to each other. Like we barely look at each other. We can make out. Like we lots of making out, right?
Oh,
but,
okay. So that was happening.
Oh yeah. No, it was. Okay. I won't go into too many details, but it was. It's a story that only she should tell. So she could tell that story. Yeah, it's her story. It's not my story. Okay. I was just the contributor, but
you were there, but
I was there. But yeah, it was just like all we could do is basically like make out. And once it came to time to talk, like we would just like clam up. It was hilarious. So, but we were together the whole year when, notes and phone calls and, all that stuff. And then we went to different high schools.
Okay.
But I used to see her because we were still both in Redwood City. Mm-hmm. And she worked at this place that was near my high school. And her mom worked at the market where we got deli sandwiches all the time. So I would always kind of check in with her mom. And hey, Jane, what's going on? How's Claire? Blah, 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 right? Because, just see her all the time. And then, fast forward, 15 years or something like that.
But wait, you just didn't see each other again?
No. Like during high school, we probably, and every time I would see her, like my friends would be like, oh, there's Claire, there's Claire, there's Claire. Like it was always like a thing. But yeah, probably a handful of times. Okay. We definitely never hung out. Yeah, we were in, and she was, Claire, I'll embarrass her. She was like most attractive in the yearbook, best body in the yearbook. So she was dating like older dudes during high school, not
college dudes. Same
age. Yeah. Yeah. Like low life, 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Let's be real.
Yeah. Come on. So she was like, I just kind of felt she was also kind of like out of my league in high school. Okay. And then I was at Rob's mom's house, and for like this, I was just there randomly, and they were having dinner with friends. And one of the people there was this guy that I knew worked at the same market as Claire's mom.
Oh, yeah.
And at this point, it was definitely in Marin at this point. So this is, adult. Now we're adults.
15 years later or something.
Yeah, at least. And then, so I just asked, like, hey, like, how's Claire? Like, what's she up to? He's like, oh, yeah, she's great, this, that, and the other. I'm like, she married? He's like, it's crazy. She's not married. I was just like, what? Like, because we're in our 30s at this point, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's okay, Rich, thanks. Like, that's interesting. And then 2008 rolled around and Facebook came on the scene and everyone signed up for it. And somebody I knew that we both knew, like, friended me on Facebook. And so I went accepted and went straight into her friend list. And there she was, and friended Claire. And I was going to Macy's in Corte Madera to buy a tie for a wedding. And I got the response, like her response. And she's like, you don't send a message? You just like, I just hit like add friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we went back and forth, had lunch like a week later, and then had a second date, and she basically moved in.
No way.
That was it. Yeah. I had moved from Mill Valley to Kentfield. So she basically moved in.
Oh my God.
Like 2 weeks in. We got married 2 years later. Now we've got, 2 kids. Yeah, it's been busy.
That is.
And then, well, the last little cutesy part of it is that we were voted like cutest couple in 8th grade in the yearbook. God. And what I didn't remember, but it came up when we were like moving. We moved a bunch in the first couple of years, and I had gone to the yearbook like people, and I had asked for the original photo.
Cool.
Like with like the marking on it and everything. So I actually have our original photo from the yearbook, and that's what we used in our like our wedding invites was our like 8th grade picture.
That is.
It's cool. Crazy.
It's so crazy.
Crazy.
So I remember this happening, of course.
Yeah.
like hearing about it and that, yeah, you reconnected with the, middle school girlfriend. And it's one of these stories that just is so incredibly rare.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of speaks to this soul connection that you had, because
it was instant.
Within 2 weeks, she's moving in practically.
And our lunch was like 4 hours. It was like a 4-hour lunch. Like it was crazy. And, I won't go into all the details, but if you remember that period of time, there was like kind of a lot of other things happening in my life. And so like that was also part, I think, of that kind of being birthed into adulthood, was kind of being shot out of a cannon from that whole experience. And literally that was all in that same time period. Like it was all within like 2 weeks. Yeah. So it was a lot. There was a lot going on.
It sounds like that's happened to you. When it rains, it really pours. That is.
No, I grimace only because I'm like, I don't need it to rain anytime soon. Yeah, because it does. And we did like a rebirth of the business 3 years ago, where we were doing almost 2 million a year in revenue, but like 60% of that was from one client. And so we parted ways with that client because they were killing us.
Yeah.
And we like had to fire almost everybody. And luckily we'd already kind of gone remote, so we didn't have the office to deal with and all that. But yeah, we had to basically reboot, 12 years into it. And so that was one of those rains that pours in 2018. And then I was like, oh, it's getting better than COVID. It's like, okay, whatever.
Whatever. Yeah. Now it's on again.
Yeah, we're good. We survived.
Yeah. And thriving. Sounds like you're really thriving.
We're doing really well. I'm really excited about the next couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my next question. What are you most looking forward to right now?
Work-wise, I'm really excited because we have it, like I said, the 10 years and the 4 years of figuring stuff out, like that's where we're at. And so we have nothing but potential to, just crush the next couple of years from a business perspective. And the coolest part, and this is the thing I really need to lean into more. It's like we still work with mostly small businesses. I mean, they could be doing 30, 40 million a year in revenue, right? But that's still technically a small business. And I've never had an interest in working with, like Nike or Microsoft. I could give a fuck. Like, no thanks.
Unless they came knocking on your door.
But we've had some of those engagements in the past, and it's awful because there's 47 people in the marketing department, and you have to do a weekly meeting with all. It's just like it just burns through you.
Right.
So the cool thing now is like with what we're doing, we're really like helping people. Like our clients, most of our clients that are doing what we kind of tell them to do. I'll put that in perspective. Use our process. Like they're having their best years ever. Like they're just killing it. It's not all us, but we're contributing to that, right? Yeah. And I love that. Like I love helping in that way. And to most people, like this is what we do is such a like what? Like how do the ads work and how does this work? And so it's great to just be like, nope. And we educate all the way. Like here's what we're doing. Like. And our clients own everything. They're fully in control. So that's been really rewarding. So
yeah, sounds like it.
More of that. I want to help as many of those people that feel like, and a lot of people gotten screwed because there's a ton of terrible agencies out there.
Is there? Okay.
It's like half probably. It's awful. Ooh. Yeah, it's awful. There's so many shysters. It's not even funny.
Oh, that's so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're in the business of teaching, empowering, and all those other things. So you're essentially you're an advertising agency, as in you create the advertising as well. And then you do all of the
Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, all that stuff, the content. Yeah. So we are trying to put the art back into Ideas Money Art a little bit more, which we have tons of opportunity to do. We've just kind of gone in the weeds on all the Facebook ad, Google ad stuff for years. So that's a big initiative too. So I've kind of stepped back into like having the creative director role on my plate, at least short term, to kind of try to supercharge that a little bit. But yeah,
you are creative director.
I mean, yeah, I'm wearing of my many hats. Like that's one extra hat that I put on temporarily, but just to try to put some focus on that again.
I was going to ask, how much are you like CEOing and then getting the
I
creative?
actually track it, like how much I'm working on the business versus on my task tracker. So I'm luckily I'm around 50-50 right now. So I'm actually working on stuff, and all my new LinkedIn and Twitter content will be even more of that. But
okay.
yeah.
So you're going to be putting yourself out there more.
I
being
shall.
seen.
Even video.
Yeah. And what are you going to be talking about? Really,
what I was just referring to with, like, if you're a business of any size, but it's still like you, right? Like if you're a $10 million business and $20 million business, most of those businesses still have zero idea like how to market effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really insane. And there's just all lookalikes. So what's my competitor doing? They do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm going to be teaching people is like, here's how to differentiate. Here's how you make the digital marketing work for you. Here's how to make sure you don't hire the wrong agency or freelancer and waste $30,000, right? Yeah. So a lot of that kind of somewhat basic stuff, but really drilling into like specific recommendations and tactics and strategies of what you should do. So people can do that on, like we have this great guide that walks people through our process. So like for free, I don't care, or obviously if they hire us, but I just want people to stop getting screwed by bad agencies. And I mean, it's to the point where people like their stuff's being held hostage. It's really awful. And it's been like that forever. Because people don't understand it. So they get sold a bill of goods. Exactly. So the content's all going to be about like empowering people to understand better and in simplified terms. And then like, okay, you want some like specific tactics and strategies to implement on your own? Boom, here you go. And it's going to be not fluff. It's going to be actionable.
Yeah. I love that. No fluff. Yeah.
No fluff. No, let's go whatever Marketing Monday or whatever nonsense.
Yeah, you don't seem like a fluff kind of guy.
I mean, I can bullshit with the best of them, but
yeah.
But not, I'm trying to avoid that in the content.
Okay. Any apprehension on your side for stepping into this new role and identity?
I think, part of the apprehension is it needs like this next phase needs to work. Like I know now how to do what the agents like I'm an expert now. Right. And I can own that. I don't have like a lot of imposter syndrome with that right now because I've been doing it for so damn long. So I think now it's like, okay, now scale it again. Right. Cause we went way up, we're doing, multiple 7 figures and then way down. And then now we're on the way back up. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, okay, now you need to like know how to grow an agency, right? Not just through referrals and like that kind of stuff or building existing client bases, but go out and attract clients. And so the apprehension is that I fall on my face and I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. But as long as I'm consistent putting the work, that shouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. If I avoid it and procrastinate, then sure. I mean, it's already June. I was supposed to start all this stuff in January. So, I'm already like typical stuff.
Mm-hmm. What has been getting in your way? Yourself or real things?
Just being a little under-resourced. So stuff comes up and it typically comes back to me at some point. And hey, what's this? And how do we do this? And fix this and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going away, which is awesome.
Okay.
And also I got to shift. I got to take the farmer hat off and put the hunter hat on. Because I still love like to dig into our processes and like, oh, I want to go like Rob calls it the lab. Like, oh, Jeff's in the lab, like he's figuring out this, and I'll still do that, but it has to be then handed off and like, okay, you guys now take it. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting better at that. So that needs to continue.
Okay, yeah, and that's another thing is as the business owner, how good are you at handing things off?
Certain things great. Other things really, really, really bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I still talk to some clients and we were just talking about this yesterday, like that's going to end really soon. And so like on those calls, I'm typically like, oh, let me jump in and talk for 5 minutes when I don't need to.
Got it. Yes. Is that going back to maybe and we all have an ego and it's a good thing, But
yeah, of course,
dipping into that zone where you're like, I'm still the guy?
Yeah, I think it's that, and just it's still like, let me put on a little show kind of thing, right? Like, and that kind of sounds more crass than I mean it. It's just like, I'm trying to educate, right? That's like one of my main things that I want to do. And so it's an opportunity to do that. It doesn't always necessarily mean that the other people on the call can't do the same and have the same knowledge. So that's why I'm just like, I'm just going to put myself on mute now. And I have to. And then at some point they'll be like, why is he on these calls? I'm like, oh yeah, he's not going to be on these calls anymore. So that's the point. We're basically going to like put a tourniquet on my face, and then I'll eventually just fall off and they won't even care. Cut the blood flow.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is exciting though. This is the big shift.
This is a big shift. And I've dabbled, right? So like I've done a big LinkedIn push on content for a couple months, and then things get busy, something happens, and you don't do it for a year. So this is the consistent, the effort that's going to be required. And my day now shapes up where I can do that, where it's just not full of client related stuff, because it's really not, which is amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
You need that. Like if you're going to be creating content and putting yourself out there, it is a full-time thing. It can be.
Yeah.
Definitely. So where can people find you to watch and consume all this incredible content that's coming?
So I've simplified pretty much across all the channels. So on Facebook, on Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm obviously my own name, but my handle is Free Conlon. So at Free Conlon, FREE, which is like always chasing freedom. So, and then also my actual name is Jeffrey. So you could like free. So it's a little play on words, but
I like that.
And it's available. I was able to get it everywhere. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then LinkedIn's just Jeff. I think am I at /Jake Jeff Conlon on LinkedIn? I might be. I don't know if I'm the first, but I'm something like that. Can't miss me. Yeah.
Okay. Exciting.
So
good for you. It's a lot. Next chapter.
Next chapter. I'm ready.
Are you? I'm excited.
I am.
For you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. All the stories.
I know.
Stories.
Apologize for if there were too many tangents, but
no, never.
Just seems like one thing leads into another, and then you're like, oh, I forgot about that. And it was super fun.
Yeah. And that's the thing. When you don't have a prescribed path, you have many paths. It is never a straight line. So
no, it's not.
It's like so much more interesting.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Willow.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.